Okay, let's unpack this. It is Monday, January 26, 2026. We are, nearly a month into the new year?
Already, yeah. Time flies.
It really does. And if you've been keeping a pulse on the digital landscape, and I mean specifically the Web3 space, the whole conversation is sort of
It's
shifting.
maturing, I think, is the word.
Maturing, that's a good way to put it. It's moving away from that speculative frenzy of what is the price of this token today? Is it up? Is it down?
Right, the day trading mentality.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And it's moving toward a much more grounded, I think a much more structural question, which is who actually gets to build the future?
that is the defining question of 2026, honestly.
Yeah.
It really is. We've spent the last decade, maybe more, watching these giants build the playground,
Yeah.
the Googles, the Facebooks of the world, and now everyone is standing at the fence asking, okay, when do we get to build the swings?
When do we get to play? Or better yet, when do we get to own a piece of the playground?
Precise.
And today we are zooming in on a specific ecosystem that just dropped a massive update 5 days ago. We're talking about the Pi network.
Yep.
More specifically, the Pi App Studio. And before you tune out thinking, oh, great, this is just some dry patch notes discussion about bug fixes or, minor UI tweaks, let me just stop you right there.
Please do, because that's the danger here. If you just read the blog post, it was titled Pi App Studio Event and Updates from January 21st, and you just skimmed it and thought it was just technical housekeeping.
You completely missed the point.
You missed the forest for the trees. You totally missed the signal amidst all the noise.
So the mission of this deep dive today is to really look at how the barrier to entry for creating an app is, being systematically dismantled.
That's the word for it, dismantled.
We are looking at a very deliberate, a very engineered attempt to transform users, and that's people like you listening, people like us who just scroll, click, like, and subscribe into creators.
And not just creators, but eventually business owners.
Exactly. And the kicker, the headline that should be flashing in neon lights above all of this, they are claiming you can do this without writing a single line of code.
And that's the headline. That's the revolution, if you want to call it that. We're looking at the democratization of software engineering. It's a phrase we hear a lot, democratization of this, democratization of that. But this is, I think, one of the first times we're seeing the tools actually catch up to the promise.
Okay, so here's the hook. I want everyone listening to just picture this scenario for a second. Really try to visualize it. You're walking down the street. Maybe you're stuck in traffic on the 405, or, I don't know, you're in the shower. That's where I get my best ideas.
Always in the shower. It's the only place you can't be distracted.
Exactly. And you have this lightning bolt moment. You think, man, there should be an app for this.
Oh, we've all been there. It's the universal modern experience.
Yeah.
The $1 million shower idea.
It really is. And maybe it's a specific type of puzzle game, something that combines Sudoku with crossword puzzles. Or maybe it's a tool to organize a really niche hobby, like identifying local birds in your area or tracking your intricate knitting projects.
Sure, something hyper-specific that a small community would absolutely love.
Right. Or maybe it's a hyper-local marketplace for trading garden vegetables. You have way too many tomatoes and your neighbor has way too many cucumbers and you just want a simple way to swap.
I would use that app tomorrow. Seriously.
Me too. And you can see in your head, you know how it works. You can picture the buttons, you know the flow, people would use it. You can see how it could monetize, how it could be a real thing. But then reality hits.
The wall.
The wall. You have zero coding skills. You don't know Python from C++ power. The words server configuration or database management might as well be in another language.
And you definitely don't have, $50,000?
Yeah.
$100,000. Just lying around to hire a dev team to build an MVP, a minimum viable product.
Not a chance. So what happens to that brilliant idea?
It evaporates. It dies in the shower with the steam. It becomes a what if. A story you tell your friends about over drinks 5 years later when you see someone else finally built it and made a fortune.
Exactly. It joins the great graveyard of good ideas.
It's the classic bottleneck of the digital age. I mean, think about it. We have successfully democratized consumption. Anyone can read anything from the Library of Congress. You can watch anything, listen to anything. You have the sum of human knowledge in your pocket.
Right. Consumption is solved.
But creation, specifically software creation, has remained a gated community. A fortress, really. You needed the keys to get in, and for the last 20 years, those keys have been one of two things. High-level technical literacy. We're talking years of focused study, or significant capital.
Well, the sources we're dissecting today suggest that PiApp Studio is trying to pick the lock on that gate. They're trying to hand out keys to everyone.
Hmm.
We are looking at features that allow non-technical people to integrate cryptocurrency payments just by typing a sentence into an AI prompt.
It sounds like science fiction, but that's what's written in the post.
And on top of that, they're removing the cost barrier through some really fascinating ad subsidy models that we absolutely need to dig into.
It's a really significant step. So, like you said, we should break this down. Let's look at it in three main pillars based on the update itself.
Okay.
First, we have to look at this easy, no-code payment integration.
Mm.
This is happening on test buy right now, so it's not real money yet. But the implications for future business models are just huge.
Right. The training ground.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Second, we'll analyze the ad-supported creation model. This is the part that I think makes it free to iterate on your ideas, which is absolutely crucial for learning and experimentation. You have to be able to fail for free.
Failure has to be an option, a cheap option.
A very cheap option.
Mm.
And third, we'll talk about the creator event and this feedback loop they're trying to establish right now with the community.
All right. Sounds like a plan. So let's dive right into that first section, the philosophy of non-technical creation.
I like that framing, the philosophy,
Yeah.
because it is a mindset shift.
It is. The source material uses that phrase a lot, non-technical people. And I want to pause there because, sometimes that feels a little dismissive. It can feel like a nice way of saying unskilled, like, oh, look at the cute non-technical person trying to use a computer.
It can definitely feel that way. It can feel patronizing. But I think it's really important we redefine the context here. In the traditional tech world, non-technical is often used as a pejorative. It implies user. It implies consumer. It implies you are just there to be monetized, to feed the algorithm with your data.
You are the product.
You're the product. But what this update is suggesting, what I find so compelling about the language they're using, is that non-technical simply means specialized in something else.
Oh, that's a great distinction. I like that a lot. It's not a lack of skill. It's a different skill set.
Exactly. You might be a brilliant artist with an incredible vision for a digital gallery app. You could be a community organizer who knows exactly what your neighborhood needs to coordinate, I don't know, trash pickups or a block party.
Like a teacher who has invented a new way to help kids learn math, but can't build the game to demonstrate it.
Perfect example. You have the domain expertise. You have the creative vision. You are the expert in your field. You just don't have the syntax. You don't speak the language of the machine.
So it's shifting the entire perspective from you need to learn to code to build to you just need to know what you want to build.
Precisely. The source explicitly mentions the goal is to convert their creativity into ownership of apps and online businesses. That is such a power statement. It's moving from a passive role to an active equity holding role. It's a difference between, renting a corner of the internet and actually owning a piece of the real estate.
I think to help us really visualize this, we should talk about the black box of development, because usually when we talk about building an app, we aren't just talking about the pretty interface you see on the screen.
No, not at all.
I think a lot of people underestimate the plumbing. They see the beautiful, shiny faucet, but they don't see the pipes, the water main, the treatment plant, all the ugly stuff behind the wall.
Oh, absolutely. The interface, the UI, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Below the surface, you have this massive tangled root system. You've got APIs, application programming interfaces, which are essentially the messengers that let different software components talk to each other.
And that's already getting technical.
It is. And then you have server costs. You have to pay Amazon or Google or someone to physically host your bits and bytes. You have to think about security protocols so your user data doesn't get leaked all over the internet. You have complex logic flows, if-then statements, databases. I mean, usually if you want to build a serious app, you have to manage all of that.
And even with those drag-and-drop website builders that have been around for a while, you eventually hit a wall, right? You always want to do that one specific thing, and the tool just says, no, can't do that.
Always. You hit a wall where you suddenly need to understand how a database talks to the front end, or how to authenticate a user session securely. Even so-called low-code platforms usually require some code eventually. It's like buying one of those furniture kits from IKEA, where the instructions suddenly switch to Swedish halfway through page 2.
Right, and you're just left there with a pile of screws and a weird-looking table.
Exactly. But the source here says PiApp Studio has wrapped all of the complexity into simple workflows. That's the claim.
So how should we think about that? What's a good analogy?
I think the best analogy is the evolution of the automobile. It mirrors this transition so perfectly. In the very early days of cars, the 1900s, to drive one, you essentially had to be a mechanic.
You had to know how it worked inside and out.
Completely. You had to know how to crank the engine by hand, which was incredibly dangerous, by the way. It could easily break your arm. You had to manually adjust the fuel-air mixture while you were driving. You had to know how to fix it when it inevitably broke down every 10 miles.
It was an engineering task, not a transportation task. You drove the car to fix the car. You didn't drive it to get to the store.
That's it, exactly. Then came the manual transmission. A little easier, but you still needed a very specific physical skill to shift gears. You had to listen to the engine, feel the clutch engage.
And if you messed it up, you stalled the car in the middle of a busy intersection and looked like a total idiot while everyone honked at you. I've been there.
We've all been there. What PiApp Studio is attempting to do here is introduce the automatic transmission, or honestly, maybe it's even a step beyond that. Maybe it's the self-driving feature. You sit in the driver's seat, you tell the car where you want to go, that's your text prompt, and the black box of the engine, the transmission, the fuel injection, all the timing belts, it just handles the rest.
You don't need to know how the combustion engine works to drive to the grocery store.
Not anymore. And in the same way, you shouldn't need to know how a blockchain transaction cryptographically signs a ledger entry to accept a payment in your app.
I love that. That really highlights the difference between operating something and engineering something. We are moving to an era of operators.
Yes.
Creators who operate the machinery of creation without having to build the machinery from scratch first.
That's the paradigm shift.
So, okay, let's get into the mechanics of this automatic transmission. This brings us to section 2. The deep dive into easy payment integration.
This is the core of the update, for sure. This is the engine block we were just talking about.
So paint the before picture for us. The source mentions a 10-minute developer library that existed previously. Now, to me, coming from the outside, 10 minutes sounds pretty fast. If I could build a business in 10 minutes, I'd be thrilled. Why was that not enough? Why was that still a barrier?
Because it was a huge leap forward for developers. That's the key distinction. If you already knew a language like JavaScript, if you already knew how to set up a development environment on your computer, that library took a task that might have taken you days of coding and compressed it into 10 minutes. It was revolutionary for that audience. But, and this is a massive but, you still needed to know where to put that code. You needed to understand the environment it was running in. If you put that 10-minute library in front of someone who's never seen an IDE, an integrated development environment, it might as well be ancient hieroglyphics.
Right. 10 minutes of total confusion is still total confusion. It's like giving me a 10-minute recipe for a perfect souffle, but the recipe is written entirely in French. It doesn't matter how fast the recipe is if I can't read a single word.
Perfect analogy. You'd just be staring at the screen wondering, okay, where do I type this? What is a terminal? Why is the screen black with green text? Am I in the Matrix?
So the after state, which is effectively starting now in January 2026, is that payment integration is done through, and I'm quoting, simple, non-technical, and interactive steps.
That's the promise.
Okay, let's walk through this mechanism. I want the listener to visualize holding their phone right now, opening it up. The source describes a feature called Customize App with PiAI. And I want to be very specific here because the instructions in the blog post are quite particular.
They are.
First, you have to be in the Pi browser. You can't do this on the desktop app. It has to be on your phone.
Correct. It's a mobile-first approach, which makes a lot of sense, right? The vast majority of the Pi user base is on mobile. They are building for the device people actually use every day. They want you to be able to build the app on the same device that will eventually consume the app. It closes the loop.
So you open the Pi browser, you create a custom app in the App Studio, then you tap a button that says Customize App with PiAI. And here is the magic part. The source says you just have to specifically mention the words Pi payment in your text prompt.
That is the interface revolution right there. It's all based on natural language processing, or NLP. You aren't dragging and dropping a payment widget and then going into some settings menu to configure API keys and merchant IDs.
No copying and pasting a long hexadecimal string that you're terrified you'll get one character wrong on.
None of that. You are just telling the AI, in plain English, I want to add a feature where users can make a Pi payment to unlock level 2 of my game.
Wait, so you just tell the AI you want payments and it just happens. That feels, I don't know, almost too easy. Like, is it actually doing the proper back-end security checks? How does it know how much to charge? How does it handle errors?
It feels easy because the AI is doing all that heavy lifting for you. When its model sees that key phrase, Pi payment, it triggers a very specific set of protocols. It interprets your intent. It understands the necessary code blocks that need to be injected into the application's backend to facilitate a secure handshake with the Pi blockchain.
So it's like a pre-packaged set of instructions that gets activated by those words.
Exactly. It sets up the callback URL. It formats the transaction request. It handles the confirmation. It completely bridges that huge gap between wanting a business model, I want to sell something in my app,
Yeah.
and actually building the technical infrastructure for one.
So if I were to type, make a button that charges 1 pi to change the background color of the app to blue, the AI is smart enough to write the code for the button itself, the code for the color change, and all the complex code for the transaction.
Theoretically, yes. That is the workflow that's being described. It interprets the user-facing logic,
Wow.
the color change, and the financial mechanic, the 1 pi charged simultaneously, and links them together.
That's incredible. However, and here's where we need to put on our critical thinking caps because we promised a deep dive, not a sales pitch. There are some pretty significant constraints.
Yes.
And I appreciate that the source is very clear and upfront about these limitations.
Yes, that transparency is key here. These constraints are vital for listeners to understand so they don't go in with false expectations. If you go in thinking you're going to build the next Amazon tomorrow and, retire next week, you're going to be very disappointed.
So what's the first big one?
First and foremost, this is currently limited to test Pi.
Okay, so we are not transacting real mainnet Pi yet with these AI-generated apps. I can't start earning my retirement fund today.
Not yet. And honestly, that is a very good thing. It's by design. When you are introducing a tool this powerful, a tool that lets literally anyone create financial software, which is essentially what this is, you absolutely need a sandbox.
A safe place to play?
A very safe place to play. You do not want a bug in an AI-generated script to accidentally drain someone's actual real money wallet.
Yeah.
Or lock their funds in a broken smart contract forever because the AI misunderstood a prompt. TestPi allows for completely risk-free experimentation.
It's the flight simulator before you get in the real F-16.
That's it. You want to crash and burn 100 times in the simulator so you don't crash once in the real world.
That makes perfect sense. Safety first. You don't give a learner permit driver the keys to a Ferrari on the Autobahn.
Exactly. You give them a beat-up Corolla in an empty high school parking lot on a Sunday morning. That's what TestPi is.
But there's another limitation here that I found really interesting and honestly a bit confusing when I first read it. The single session limitation.
Yes.
The source defines a session as one self-contained instance of activity. What does that really mean?
Right. This is a technical constraint that also acts as a design constraint. It's a creative box you have to work within. Currently, in this specific AI generation mode, the app doesn't have what's called a persistent memory database for the purchases.
Break that down for us. What does persistent memory database mean in plain English?
Okay, so usually if you buy the pro version of an app on your phone, that information is stored somewhere permanent. It's a record in a database tied to your account that says user XYZ owns the pro version.
Right, so the app always remembers.
It always remembers. So when you close the app, turn off your phone, and open it again next week, the app checks that database, sees the record, and says, yes, this person paid. Unlock the pro features. Right now, these AI-generated apps do not have that long-term memory connected to the payments.
So if a user buys something, then closes the app and comes back later.
The app won't remember they bought it. The purchase is forgotten.
So that means no buy the pro version forever upgrades yet. And no monthly subscriptions, I'm guessing?
Exactly. Any business model that relies on the app remembering a purchase over time is not possible with this specific tool right now, because the app state effectively resets every time you reload it.
The source gives a couple of examples. It suggests things like unlocking extra in-app features for a single round of a game, or buying items for a specific one-time task.
Right. You have to think of it less like buying a house and more like putting a quarter in an old-school arcade machine.
That's a great way to put it. The quarter gets you one play. When the game is over, you have to put another quarter in.
Exactly. The value is ephemeral. It's consumed immediately within that session.
Okay, let's brainstorm some examples here, because I want to understand what is actually possible today, given that limitation. If I'm building a game, maybe a clone of Space Invaders?
You could use a TestPi payment to buy a special shield that lasts for that specific game. Once your ship is destroyed and the game over screen appears, the session is done. The shield is gone. If you want it again in the next game, you have to pay again.
Or maybe you have a quiz app, a trivia game. You could pay one test pie to reveal a hint for a particularly difficult question. The value is consumed instantly. You use the hint, you answer the question, the transaction has served its purpose.
Perfect. Or let's say you build a productivity timer, like a Pomodoro timer. You could have a feature where you pay 1.1 test pi to unlock a fun background theme or a specific ambient music track for that specific 25-minute focus session.
Mhm.
Once the timer rings and the session is done, the transaction is done.
Right. It forces you to think about in-the-moment value.
Exactly. It's ephemeral value. Or think about one of those AI digital art generators. You could build an app where a user pays to generate one image based on a prompt. They save the image to their phone, the session ends, they got their value, which was the image file, the creator got their payment. You don't need the app to remember you for that transaction to be complete and feel fair.
That's a really good example. So now the obvious question might be, well, why bother if it's not permanent? Why would I build a business on disappearing value?
Because the point isn't to build a billion-dollar business today with this tool. The point is education and proof of concept. It establishes a foundation. It teaches these new creator users how to think about and build monetization incentives into their apps. It forces you to ask a very difficult and important question. What value can I provide right now, in this moment, that is worth paying for?
That's a really good point. It forces you to focus on immediate utility rather than promising some future value.
Exactly. And that's a harder skill to learn, arguably. If you can figure out how to make someone want to pay you for something that lasts for 5 minutes, you'll be much, much better prepared when persistent storage and mainnet payments are unlocked later on. It's like business model training wheels.
It's training you to understand the psychology of the transaction. What makes someone click buy?
Precisely. Plus, let's be honest, from a purely technical standpoint, adding persistent user databases adds a massive layer of complexity, cost, and security concerns. By skipping that for now, they keep the barrier to entry as low as humanly possible.
Right. Database management, user authentication, that's where things get really messy. Avoiding that for now allows the no-code promise to actually hold water in this initial phase.
It keeps it simple.
Speaking of cost, let's pivot. Because even if the AI writes all the code for you, and even if we're only using fake TestPy, the computers in the background running this stuff aren't free. Building apps, even with AI, costs real-world computing power.
And real-world electricity.
Which brings us to Section 3, democratizing access through ad-supported creation.
This is the other half of the puzzle. We just talked about lowering the technical barrier, which is the coding. Now we were talking about lowering the financial barrier.
The source mentions that every time a creator uses the AI to generate an app iteration or to deploy it to a server, it costs a small amount of pi. Why is that? I think a lot of people assume AI is just magic that happens in the cloud, like it's air.
Because computing isn't free. In fact, high-end computing is very, very expensive. When you type a prompt into an AI, that request goes to a server farm somewhere in the world. Racks of graphics processing units, or GPUs, which are these incredibly expensive pieces of hardware, thousands of dollars per unit, they spin up.
They start doing the math.
They start doing the math. A lot of electricity is consumed. A lot of heat is generated that needs to be cooled by massive air conditioning units. Someone has to pay for those electrons and for the depreciation on that hardware. In the Pi ecosystem, that cost is denominated in Pi.
So previously, if I was a brand new pioneer, or maybe I was one of the many users who hadn't migrated to mainnet yet, or I just had a very low Pi balance, I was basically stuck.
You were stuck.
I couldn't pay the gas fee, so to speak, to create my app.
Right. And that created a major friction point. It's a catch-22.
Yeah.
You want people to experiment, you want them to fail and try again and learn, but you're asking them to pay up front for an experiment that has a high chance of failing. That stops most people before they even start.
It's like charging admission to a playground. If you charge $5 just to walk through the gate, the kids who aren't sure if they even like sliding probably won't come in.
That's a perfect way to put it.
So enter the solution. Watch to create.
It's a very clever mechanism. The update now allows pioneers to deploy their app iterations without paying any Pi, simply by watching an ad. But, and this is a crucial detail, this option is specifically for those with App Studio balances below 0.25 Pi.
So it's a safety net. It's for the beginners, the newcomers. It's not for the whales or the power users.
Correct. If you are already a power user with plenty of Pi in your wallet, you just pay the tiny fee and move on with your day because your time is worth more than the 30 seconds you'd spend watching the ad. This is targeted specifically at the person starting from absolute zero. It ensures that a lack of funds is not a lack of opportunity.
Now, I want to look at the economics of this subsidy because the source was very, very honest about something, and I really respect the transparency.
Me too.
It explicitly states that the ad revenue does not cover the cost of the app generation.
I found that line fascinating. It jumped right off the page. Usually when a company implements ads, it's a profit center, or at the very least, it's a break-even proposition. Here, Pi Network is openly admitting, hey, the money we get from our ad partner when you watch this 30-second ad is significantly less than what it costs us in server time to let you run this AI generation.
Why do it? Why knowingly lose money on every ad view? That seems like bad business on the surface. Are they just burning cash for fun?
It's not bad business. It's a long-term investment. It's a calculated subsidy designed specifically to broaden access. Think about it this way. If they charged the full, true cost of the AI computation, almost no one would start. The barrier would be too high.
Okay, that makes sense. But here's the other side of the coin. If they made it completely free, with zero friction at all, what do you think would happen?
Oh, it's obvious bots.
Bots. Spammers. People would write scripts to generate a million nonsense Hello World apps just to clog the system, either maliciously or just to see if they could. The servers would melt down in an hour.
Ah, so the ad isn't there to make money. The ad is a filter.
Exactly. The time it takes to watch the ad is a form of proof of work, in a sense, a proof of attention. It prevents spamming and exploitation because a bot can't easily watch an ad. You have to actually sit there as a human and watch it. It removes the financial hurdle, the money, but it keeps a small time and attention hurdle in place to ensure you are a real person who is serious about this iteration. That is a really nuanced and clever strategy. It's balancing accessibility with sustainability and security. It's essentially saying, we will pay for your compute power, but you have to pay us with your attention for 30 seconds to prove you're real and you actually want this.
And they're also very clear that this is an experiment. The source notes this whole ad model is subject to change or cancellation. They are testing the waters. They're collecting data to see if this model can eventually become sustainable, or if the value of the apps created by the community outweighs the short-term cost of the subsidy.
It's venture capital logic, but applied to the entire user base.
It is. Instead of a VC firm funding 10 startups hoping one becomes a unicorn, the network itself is funding tens of thousands of tiny experiments, hoping a few of them become the next killer app. And that outcome is worth subsidizing the thousands of other experiments that didn't work out.
They're betting that one of the listeners out there is going to build something amazing, and the only way to find that person is to let everyone take a shot.
You have to let everyone take a shot.
Speaking of finding that next killer app, that's a perfect transition. Let's move to Section 4, the creator, event, and community feedback. Because they aren't just releasing these tools into the void and hoping for the best, they are actively trying to rally the troops.
Right. This isn't a passive update. Starting this month, January 2026, there is a community-wide creator event. This isn't just a software update, it's a call to action. It's a mobilization effort.
And the mechanism to join is pretty simple, right? It's just a banner at the top of the App Studio interface. You click it and you're in.
Super straightforward.
But let's talk about the incentive structure, because I think it's really clever. They are offering 5 Pi in credits to the first 1,000 qualified responses to a survey about the new tools.
But you have to look closely at the condition attached to those credits. That's the important part.
They are exclusive to App Studio use.
Exactly. This isn't a 5 Pi airdrop that you can go and withdraw or trade for goods and services. You can't send it to your friend. You can only use it to pay for the AI generation and deployment of apps.
It's like a gift card for creativity, or like getting store credit at a hardware store that you can only spend on lumber and nails and tools.
That's a perfect analogy. It brilliantly solves the cold start problem we mentioned earlier. Even with the ad subsidy, there can still be a psychological barrier to spending your own resources, even your time, on a first attempt that you think will probably fail.
The fear of the blank page.
The fear of the blank page and the fear of wasting your shot. By giving users 5 Pi that must be spent on creation, they are effectively removing that fear. You might as well build something, because otherwise the credit is completely useless. It burns a hole in your virtual pocket that you use it for its intended purpose.
And in return for this free creativity credit, they want feedback. They want to know what apps people are building and which ones the community finds useful.
And that feedback loop is absolutely critical at this early stage. They are asking the community to highlight their favorite useful apps. This signals that the platform is still evolving. They aren't saying, here is the finished product, take it or leave it.
They're saying, here are the tools.
Now, tell us what you're building. Tell us what is working, what's frustrating you, and what isn't, so we can build the next better set of tools.
Yeah.
It empowers that learner demographic to actively shape the future of the platform.
So it's treating the user base not just as beta testers who are there to find bugs, but as co-designers of the whole system.
Which is the core ethos of Web3, ideally. Community governance, community direction. It's putting the feedback loop right in the center of the development cycle, not as an afterthought.
So we have the tools, the AI prompts, we have the funding model, the ads and the credits, and we have the community mobilization event. Now we have to ask the big question. Section 5. So what? The big picture. What does this all mean for the future of the internet, for the future of online business? Why should the average person who isn't a creator care about this update?
I think this brings us back to that phrase from the source text, sustainable business models.
Okay, connect the dots for us. How does this all lead to that?
Okay, so we've established we have easy payments combined with access for all. By allowing non-technical people to charge for in-app features, even if it's just with TestPy for now, the network is effectively running a massive global vocational training program. They are training a generation of digital entrepreneurs.
It's practice mode for running a real online economy.
It's exactly that. The ultimate goal, as the text explicitly says, is to boost Pi utility. Now, utility is a buzzword in the crypto space that gets thrown around so much, it almost loses its meaning.
Right. It can mean anything and everything.
But here it means something very specific. It means using the currency to do things that have intrinsic value. Buying a service, unlocking content, accessing a tool.
Not just holding it in a wallet and hoping the line on a chart goes up.
Exactly. It's about commerce, not just speculation. And real sustainable utility doesn't usually come from one giant corporation building one giant monolithic app that does everything. It comes from what economists call the long tail.
The long tail. Okay, explain that concept for those who might not have heard it before.
It's a concept that was popularized by Chris Anderson, the former editor of Wired. Think of the traditional retail model, like a Walmart or a Target. They can only stock the hits, the most popular items that millions and millions of people want to buy. There's limited shelf space.
The head of the curve.
The head of the curve. But the internet allows for the long tail, the millions upon millions of niche items that only a few hundred or even just a few dozen people want. But when you add them all up, that collective market is just as large, if not larger, than the market for the hits.
Like how Amazon can sell millions of obscure books that a physical Barnes & Noble would never ever stock on its shelves.
Exactly. Now apply that to apps. Think of the Apple App Store. Sure, you have the huge hits at the head, Facebook, Instagram, Uber, TikTok,
Right.
but you also have millions of tiny niche apps in the long tail.
A guitar tuner specifically for left-handed players.
Yes. Or a recipe organizer for people with a very specific gluten-free, dairy-free diet. Or a local transit map for a small town that the big mapping companies ignore. Or 100 different flashlight apps. That is the long tail. Collectively, the volume of utility in that tail is massive.
So Pi Network is betting that by lowering the barrier to creation to effectively zero, thousands of its users will create thousands of these small, specific apps that solve small, specific problems for their own communities.
A hyper-local app for a specific town in Nigeria. A fan club app for a specific indie band in Brazil. A tool for a specific type of knitting only practiced in a village in Scotland.
Things that a big corporation like Google or Meta would never, ever build because the addressable market is too small. It's not worth their time.
Not at all. But for an individual creator, that small market is plenty. It's valuable. It's a real business. And when you have thousands of those little businesses, you create a robust, resilient, and truly useful economy.
And it all comes back to shifting the user from a passive consumer to an active owner. That quote we mentioned at the start, convert their creativity into ownership, that really feels like the North Star for this entire initiative.
That is the profound shift. That's the end game. When you build an app, even a very simple one, and someone pays you for it, you have created a digital asset. You're no longer just scrolling through a feed, generating ad revenue for somebody else. You are participating directly in the value creation of the network. You are an owner.
It's the difference between the gig economy, where you drive the car that Uber owns or deliver the food that DoorDash sells, and the true creator economy, where you own the car, or in this case, you own the app.
And you didn't even have to know how to build the engine. You just had to tell the self-driving car where you wanted to go. That's the magic of it.
That is a future I can definitely get behind. So let's wrap this up. We have covered a lot of ground today.
We have. It's a dense update with a lot of implications.
So, to summarize the key takeaways for everyone listening, Pi App Studio has, in one fell swoop, lowered the technical barrier by introducing AI prompts that can code payment integrations for you.
And at the same time, they've lowered the financial barrier by introducing an ad-supported deployment model for anyone with a low balance.
We are currently in a test Pi and single session phase. This is the training ground. It's a sandbox for risk-free experimentation where purchase history isn't saved, but the lessons learned by the creators are permanent.
And the network is actively subsidizing all of this, literally paying for the compute power out of its own pocket to find the next great utility apps and to get you, the listener, involved in building the ecosystem.
It's a really bold experiment in economic sustainability and in user empowerment. It's definitely messy, it's still very early, but it is undeniably moving the needle.
I agree completely.
So here is my final thought for you, the listener, to take away from this. We started this deep dive by asking you to imagine an app idea that you had. A few years ago, the primary limit to making that idea a reality was your ability to code or your ability to pay someone else to code.
The two big walls.
The two big walls. Today, on Monday, January 26, 2026, those walls are effectively gone. The technical barrier is now an AI prompt away. The financial barrier is a 30-second ad away.
Which leaves only one limit left, the only thing standing between your idea and a functional app.
Your imagination. If you could build an app just by describing it, what problem would you solve tomorrow? What community would you serve? What utility would you bring to the world?
That's the real question now. And if you think you have an answer, the source says to check that banner in the App Studio.
Yeah.
You might just be one of the first 1,000 to get the credits to start building it.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. Go create something cool.
And remember, the best way to predict the future is to build it. See you next time.